So I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of information, a little story about myself. I have actually been back into, well, I've been bow hunting now for 3 or 4 years. I have to look when I first started taking pictures. So not very long. I was raised hunting, but I always hunted with a gun. I didn't have patience for the bow. My dad raised me out in the woods. I was always out hunting with him from the time that I could hold still. Kinda. I'm sure I wasn't always holding still. But I was always out there with him during his bow seasons, but I never really got into bow until actually I stopped hunting altogether for probably about 15 years, maybe longer, and moved away from Michigan. Was in Memphis for a couple of years for a job, and when I got back to Michigan, I just got the itch to get out there and get in the woods because it had been so long. So I first started back out in gun. Probably didn't kill anything the first 2 years. No, the second year I got a doe. But I think I saw one decent sized buck my first year, and then that was last year I saw all season. And I hunted as much as I possibly could. I had a job where I had plenty of time, so I spent a lot of time in the woods staring at trees. But I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And my dad had kind of fallen out of love with hunting. Not that he never really fell out of love. He just didn't have the passion that he used to. That happens to a lot of us, I think. So he wasn't really wanting to jump back in like I was. I was obviously immediately obsessed again, which is why I spent so much time staring at trees. But I didn't really know what the heck I was doing, and I was afraid to go. I'm not afraid to admit that I was afraid to go out in public land, especially with a gun. And even if I did go out in public land, I didn't know where to start. I'd always had my dad taking me from the truck to the tree stand and dropping me off, then picking me up on the way out of the woods. I'd always had that security blanket. So the whole experience was kind of nerve-wracking for me to try to go back out and do it again on my own, even as a close to 30-year-old when I did it. So I just went out into the woods, and I would sit there in the middle of the woods and had no idea what I was doing, wouldn't barely see any deer. I killed a couple of deer, a couple of does. But then I started listening to podcasts, and I was immediately obsessed with those because you never had a radio show where you could listen to deer hunting talk. That's fantastic. So usually it was where you always had to watch a TV show or something like that. Well, got into podcasts, YouTube, and just buried myself in it. And the one that was most influential was, again, I don't know, I've talked about it before, it's probably getting sick of hearing about it, but the Wired Hunt podcast and Dan Infalt as a guest. Then that pulled me into Dan Infalt everything, checked out all this stuff, but anything on Wired to Hunt that dealt with public land, I was drawn to. But even in the beginning, though, I did some deer habitat work out at my aunt's. She has 6 acres, and so any of that stuff too, it was like I couldn't get enough of it on YouTube or on podcasts. So dove. I mean, I was immersed in it for the longest time, and still am. But that's what's given me the opportunity to see a lot more deer, a lot more bucks, figure out where they're going, where they're coming from. Last year, I pulled the trigger real quick with a bow. Pulled the trigger real quick on the first buck that I saw because that was my first buck. And I know that's not always easy to admit, but it was the first year where I had a good year scouting, and the first sit of the day, 10 minutes into the sit. The first sit of the season, the first sit of the day, 10 minutes into the sit. There's a nice little 6-pointer, and probably was only a 2-year-old deer, maybe 2.5-year-old, but that was my first buck, and I'm extremely proud of that buck. And the only reason that I was able to have that success, which I considered a success, the only reason I could have that success was from listening to the podcasts and doing preseason scouting. And I did that preseason scouting. I found a decent spot that had basically what you've seen in all my videos. The tip of a point is where I set up on, and I put a tree stand on, and it had bedding around it and real thick, nasty all around it. And I set up right up on the tip, and sure enough, 10 minutes after I had my tree stand set up, in walks a buck. So it's, for those people out there who are only looking for information from big buck killers, I'm not that yet. I hope to be. That's what I aspire to do. I aspire to put down big bucks, but it is not my ultimate goal. My ultimate goal is to have fun, be out in the woods, be able to essentially have enough information, be successful enough so that I can give all of that experience, all that knowledge to my kids when it's time for them to start hunting. That's really what I'm in it for. I obviously would love to have success in taking down big deer, but if that doesn't come, it doesn't come. As long as I can put meat in the freezer every year and I can teach my kids how to see deer consistently and provide for themselves, that's what I'm in it. That's what I'm in it for. So I appreciate everybody who watches. I appreciate everybody who subscribes. I appreciate everybody who likes the videos. So, and I appreciate the feedback. Please keep the feedback coming, because again, I'm still getting into it, and I think we all learn from each other. I think that's what these YouTube videos are for, and that's why I enjoy them. That's what I'm doing, is I'm learning, and hopefully from some of the things that I've learned, I can pass them on to other people who have that same kind of passion. And so when you leave comments and feedback, those are things that I take. I take every single one of them into consideration, and I input them into the way I do things. So keep the comments coming, keep the likes coming, keep the subscriptions coming, please, and I'll keep making these videos. And thank you again.